This is WMNF Tampa. Stay tuned for True Talk.
حسرة مخيب هالدنيا ومحلاها الدنيا بلا غسرة فكرت أيامي وقلت يا حسرة مخيب هالدنيا ومحلاها الدنيا بلا غسرة فحكيت لأمي ما ونسب القيمة وعشرة قديمة وقلت يا حسرة رضيت والدينا وينك يا حنينة تفرقنا مشينا وقلت يا حسرة ما أحلانا ذراري الدنيا محلاها ماما وزينها ديما مواتاها محلاها الحومة ديما الحومة مظلومة قتلتنا الشيخة وزادت قتلتنا الحكومة فكرت اللمة قسمنا اللي فما وكل حد وهمه وكنا محلانا واليوم زمامة وبكات الماما خشومات في الشمة.
Welcome to True Talk on WMNF 88.5. It's Thursday, May 1st. And Trump's 100 days in office, which is really an artificial number, has passed. And there is a lot of controversy about what he's actually accomplished in the first 100 days as far as real policies. I mean, there's a lot of executive orders ruling by decree without Congress, and Congress is basically being useless, not checking the president on anything, including all the unconstitutional stuff. So, but on today's program, we're going to be speaking specifically about Trump's policy to go after college universities under the guise of anti-Semitism. And in reality, he's actually trying to change the ideological makeup of college campuses to make them more conservative. That's something that the Trump administration or conservatives as a whole have been complaining about for years, is how liberal these universities are and how they, and that's really the root causes. But they're using the issue of fighting anti-Semitism as the cover for these policies. And they've been rounding up college students that have participated in protests against the Israeli genocide. Imagine students that have been complaining and criticizing and protesting against war and against killing children. And those are the ones that get rounded up. Not the students that are actually promoting genocide. Not that we're advocating for any students to be arrested, but at least provide the ability for free speech. Joining me is my co-host, Samar Jarrah, and my name is Ahmed Bedier, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We'll have a professor that's an expert on this topic from the University of California in Berkeley to discuss Trump's war on college universities and his efforts to silence any criticism of Israel. Samar, hello. Samar is joining me now, but the music is still on. Here we go. Samar, yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, ya Ahmed. How are you?
Alaikum salam. How are you?
I am good, alhamdulillah. I know that our media are covering the fires going on in occupied Palestine. However, the killing machine on Gaza is still going on. I just wanted people to know that it has not stopped. And I think Dr. Hatem Bazian just joined us, Ahmed. So if you don't mind, I would like to introduce him because Dr. Hatem is a leading authority on Islamophobia and Islamophobia studies. And he has at least 5 books published. And he also participated in several UN special reports on freedom of religion and freedom of belief. He is a co-founder of Zaytuna College, which I think is the first accredited Muslim liberal arts college in the US. And he lectures at Berkeley and I think St. Mary's College of California, or at least he did. He's very well published and a very, very interesting scholar when it comes to decolonization. Good to have you on the show, Dr. Hatem.
Well, thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Hatem. Just before you joined, my co-host was talking about what is going on in U.S. campuses. And maybe what we could start with is talk maybe separately about Palestinian activism, Arab Muslim activism. How has it been going on for the past maybe 20 and 25 years since you were a professor when nobody was paying attention? Like, were they students who were promoting anti-Semitic and violent ideology, and all of a sudden our administration just paid attention to their existence? So give us a background on student activism vis-a-vis Palestine in the past 20 years on U.S. campuses.
Well, if we want to really examine activism on Palestine on U.S. college campuses, it has a long, long history. Even if we think in the 1960s, there were presence of Palestine on campuses. It linked up to the anti-Vietnam War protest, even the Black Power movement. Malcolm X actually visited Gaza himself. The Black Panther Party had a position and a statement on Palestine. And then you get into the period of the anti-apartheid movement, Central American Solidarity movement, mobilization for jobs, rights, and economy. That Palestine was there. It might not have been central, but it was part of the mix. And I think the critical juncture with the end of apartheid South Africa, Palestine came into the center because it was one of the most important solidarity movement, both Palestinian solidarity with South Africa and also the release of Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela expressed tremendous solidarity with Palestinians because of the linkages between their struggles. The college campus has always been the place of students, Palestinian students coming from second generation in America, but also the arrival of Palestinians from different parts of the world, both as a result of economic migration, but also periods of strife, the Lebanon War, the Iraq-Iran War, the Iraq-Kuwait War, even the Syria's war, the intifadas in the West Bank. All that resulted in also Palestinians coming to the United States, coming for education, coming to study as refugees and immigrants, and that continuously made it possible for this organizing to take place. Now, the labeling of Palestine, pro-Palestine, and solidarity movement as anti-Semitic, this is not new. Israeli activists, campus Zionists have always used the framing and the tarnishing of Palestine activism by labeling it anti-Semitic. And this is done, one is to defame the movement rather than the movement Palestinian movement being recognized and understood as a call for freedom, an end to oppression, an end for settler colonialism and ethnic cleansing, it demonizes the Palestine movement. The second, it immediately makes linkages that the Palestine movement is a continuation or is being posited as an extension of the World War II and the Holocaust. And that allows this smearing campaign to take place in a sense of attempting to delegitimize the Palestinian as an indigenous people trying to claim their right to their land. And the third is to actually pressure university administrators, people in civil society, institutions of opinion making to distance themselves and not touch and engage the Palestinians on their own ground and or narrative out of fear that they will be smeared themselves by the smear of anti-Semitism as such. So this has been a long-going campaign and strategy of different periods. And then the second part of this smear, again, the one is the anti-Semitic smear, and the second is to constantly claim that this Palestinian movement is about violence, about terrorism, and constantly trying to frame it as such and linking it throughout the various periods to presenting and pushing for legislation that would target, curtail, surveil, and possibly arrest pro-Palestine activists in the United States. But I think the period post 9/11, the U.S. involvement in Iraq and Afghanistan, the Black Lives Matter movement, and so on, have changed the topography. And I do think what we're witnessing is this intense campaign on college campuses that is accumulative, both of previous experiences and the outcome of this painful and really difficult history that the Palestine movement on college campuses have experienced.
We talked about the students, but I just remembered Dr. Hatem because at one time I was teaching at USF as an adjunct instructor, and I remember it was people like Daniel Pipes. They created some sort of online before the Canary mission that we can talk about it later, but targeting professors and naming professors and doxing them and publishing their addresses. And I think they also targeted you and your family personally. Can you talk to that? Because this intimidation is not only targeting students who can be helpless, but even tenured professors have been subjected to this amazing injustice.
Yeah. If you actually examine any person's background that had to deal with the Palestine issue, being Palestinian or in solidarity with Palestinians, they have been defamed, targeted, Zionist listed. I don't like the term blacklisted because it has a racist connotation, but Zionist listing, going back to the ADL, having its targeted listing of individuals. We're very familiar with the ADL spying case and targeting individual that came out in the Bay Area in 1992, which showed that the ADL had collected informations about individuals having dossier, and these dossier was specifically to target individuals on the question of Palestine. We know in terms of the case of Sam al-Aryan, the LA8 case, and the various methods and approaches. Daniel Pipes have always been a person that is engaged in racism, demonization, Islamophobia. David Horowitz have a similar type of list, including publishing a book about the professors, where he listed the professors, 2/3 of those were listed, having been listed around the question and the issues of Palestine. And Canary Mission is another development of a long history of this systematic, almost intelligence operations, gathering information and then putting it out as a way to push people out of reaching and engaging in impact of the mainstream. As a result of this recent protest movement, actually going back even to 2021 when the assault on Al-Aqsa Mosque and this whole campaign, there was an increase and sharpness to the targeting, including the highlighting of the activists in Canary Mission, professors on college campuses that are sympathetic to Israel, beginning to target and harass, intimidate, and even point to their students. That leads to the current period 2023 to now, where professors who said don't hire my students and calling them with all kinds of names to tarnish their standing, also demonizing various aspects of Palestinian culture, that the ADL itself basically begin to compare the Palestinian headscarf, the kufi, being as akin to a Nazi symbol, very despicable type of framing from Jonathan Greenblatt at the ADL, making people take off their headscarf, denying them access to events in public events, sporting events, and so on. So this attempt to try to target Palestinian professors, students, and activists is a way to try to exclude them from having an impact in the public space and to continue to preserve Israel and Zionist uncontested domination of U.S. Political, social, cultural framing. But I do think that we are seeing a massive shift nationally.
Exactly. And this is what I want to ask you is, in spite of the amazing amounts of billions of dollars that Israel spends here in the U.S. and AIPAC spends here in the U.S. On mainstream media, colleges, propaganda, demonizing the Palestinians and the Palestinian cause, October 7 happens, and the students, in spite of all this propaganda and lack of media coverage and the biases in media coverage, actually, the students were able to see through and realize that there is a genocide going on in Gaza, and they started really demonstrating, occupying halls. How do you explain that? How were the young people, which includes a lot of young Jewish Americans, and maybe this is what was intimidating and shocking the Zionists in America, how could all these young people escape this propaganda and be able to see the truth and really take matters into their hands? And we see, of course, maybe it started with Colombia, and we know what happened next.
Yeah. Well, I think that the Israeli propaganda, the work of AIPAC, the work of ADL, American Jewish Committee, and so on, Zionist Organization for America, functions to a certain level. Once the landscape is, in essence, neutral, and the political elite and the circumstances are manageable or could be dealt with in a normative way. But I do think the events over the past 20 plus years, beginning with the US invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, it changed the topography considerably. We need to remind people that, in particular, the US invasion of Iraq was edged on, encouraged, you could say lobbied for by Netanyahu himself, who showed up in Congress and testified about the threat posed by Saddam Hussein, weapons of mass destruction, and so on. So that was one, for me, is the beginning of the breakdown of Israel's centrality in relations to its propaganda and its functionality. the events on the U.S. invasion of Iraq turned out to be a disaster, pushed by the neoconservatives, pushed by a heavy dose of the pro-Israel segment and the lobbying. And then subsequent to this, you had the Israel campaigns on Gaza, which every military campaign and every attack and every assault only magnified the intractability of Israel's position vis-a-vis the Palestinians. And the only way to maintain this was by the heavy lobbying, heavy expenditure on propaganda, heavy targeting of students, and that has its functionality if information could be stopped. Into this discourse, the emergence of social media, alternative media, ways of people accessing information that is no longer dominated by what we call traditional old media. That made it possible for people to actually engage in ways that were not present. Adding to this mix, I would say, is the emergence and the strength of the Jewish Voice for Peace and a number of segments within the progressive Jewish space. And they also began initially to engage in Palestine, but then took on an anti-Zionist perspective and came in full strength. And I would say by the time you get into 2016-17, that strength and that engagement coalesces and provides a larger coalition engaging Palestine, which sees itself on college campuses where propaganda now is facing a movement with multi-pronged participants. The last part to this conversation, I would say, we have to take account of the emergence of the Black Lives Matter movement. First in relations to Ferguson, but definitely as we speak in relations to the murder of George Floyd. That likewise, not only that it opened the debate and the discussion and about the positionality of blacks in the United States, but also blacks across the world, movements in Europe, movement across the world taken onto the colonial cultural heritage, the statues, and that immediately linked to Palestine as a focal point, as a major linkages where the Black Lives Matter organizers across the country and globally took on and embraced the Palestinian cause on equal basis. So now we get a movement that have developed from the invasion of Iraq war, consolidating and beginning to have a full-fledged horizon in its terms of its outlook and linkages to decolonization, a critique of racial structure, a critique of power, a critique of U.S. politics, and that also explained the backlash, in particular in terms of populist backlash that traces back, again, I think, to the Iraq war and post-Iraq war, but gets to actually focuses attention on Black Lives Matter on the one hand, of taking our country back, and we need to eliminate diversity, equity, inclusion, take on and challenge ethnic studies. That's really a populist right-wing reaction and attempting to reconstitute a paradigm that has been almost cracking at the foundation, and Palestine is one of those. Israel, Zionism have hitched its wagon to America's right-wing political right-wing backlash, and also hitched its wagon in Europe to right-wing, extreme right-wing backlash against immigrants and Muslim population. So we're seeing these dynamics in terms of what is taking place in front of our eyes as a result of this transformation. What we are witnessing today, again, is something that I actually wrote about, that pro-Israel activists, the Zionist organizations are going to take on limiting or trying to win the debate by silencing the voices of critique. And I do think that they are committing one of the most horrific strategic mistakes, not that I'm giving them advice, is that they are taking on the First Amendment and US constitutional law. And the assault on the university's administration structure has brought in people from across the spectrum on campuses, understanding that the defense of Israel, in the way that is being articulated by ADL and others, require a complete dismantling of free speech, dismantling of academic freedom, dismantling of the foundation of the American university as an institution. And this is not a defense of academic institutions in large, but to understand that what is being asked and what is being pushed at the college campuses, even before Trump. Again, Trump took it to what considered the logical conclusion of taking over the university. I think in this they committed the fatal strategic mistake of Israel's position on college campuses, and I think it's untenable moving forward.
If you're just joining us, this is True Talk with Ahmed, Bedier, and Samar. Jarrah, where our guest today is Bedier. He's a professor and lecturer at the University of California, Berkeley, where he focuses on Arabic language, Arab society and culture, and classical Arabic literature, poetry, Quranic commentary, and many other topics. We're specifically interested in knowing this Trump's war on universities, which is disguised in fighting anti-Semitism. And you're a professor. You've been at Berkeley for a couple of decades. Don't want to age you, but for a while. Do you see, and you visit a lot of college universities, do you think that anti-Semitism is rampant on college campuses in America and the lives of Jewish students is under threat, as it's depicted by this administration and by politicians and other leaders, that somehow that the problem is so massive that they have to take these, unorthodox measures and extreme measures to fight back, to save the Jewish people from a potential, another Holocaust or genocide? Is it like that at all? Because it doesn't seem like the rhetoric is matching up with the reality on the ground.
Well, if you take the ADL data, which I think last week said some 9,000 plus anti-Semitic incidents on college campuses, or not college campuses, but in the country. But if we dig deep on the data, we find that close to 40%, give or take, of the incidents that the ADL reports are actually labeling and framing Palestine protests as anti-Semitism. So this is immediately tells us that there is a weaponization of anti-Semitism in relations to college campuses in order to silence the critique of Israel, the critique of its policy, the critique of the genocide that is taking place. So this encompasses any protest that is taking place on college campuses, including by Jewish progressive students or even Orthodox Jewish protesters joining Palestinians or pro-Palestinians in labeled anti-Semitism. So there is a weaponization of anti-Semitism in order to silence the protest and then push the university administrators to crack down and to use campus safety as an avenue to limit free speech. So there's different parts of the university, what you call student conduct and student code and so on. So you have what you call time, place, and manner. And then you have a set of regulations pertaining to campus safety, building safety, and so on. So if we think about the urging of the university to crack down, so they use the area of campus safety, not feeling safe, also using mental health impact as a way to say we are not saying that free speech is to be limited, but the free speech of Palestine is injurious to Zionist students who have Israel as the central part of their identity. So that is the dynamic that is being played relative to this. Even before the current period, there's been an attempt to try to investigate universities in relations to their permitting pro-Palestine or Palestine students in alliance or in cooperation with Jewish students to speak about Palestine. Investigations carried out during Democratic administrations and during Republicans, more so during the Trump first term, and now is being weaponized more. Now, does anti-Semitism exist in the United States? Absolutely. What are the major features of anti-Semitism? I think if you look at Trump and the right-wing coalition that he has, interestingly, it's very rampant. Even yesterday, the bill that was passed, or at least been written up in the Senate by the Health and Labor Committee, they actually have delayed the passage, but one part of the bill that allows, it is not considered anti-Semitism to say, and this is in the bill, says that for Christians who say that Jews killed Jesus is not an anti-Semitic statement. So to say Israel is committing genocide in Gaza is anti-Semitic, but to actually blame Jews as a whole which is a basic pillar of evangelical Christianity and Christians, is not deemed, it's in the bill itself, which is, again, you get what you call a theological Christian position relative to Jesus in that way. So what you have is a smokescreen of using the Palestine protest to regulate the campus in relations to Israel, while almost giving a free hand to real substantiated anti-Semitism, including Trump and much of the Republicans who blame George Soros for all the ills that are taking place in society. George Soros is a philanthropist of Jewish background, but he's blamed for everything and every ill. He's blamed for immigration, blamed for supporting cities that give
sanctuary
to immigrants, all that.
And
so that
DEI.
really, that's deep anti-Semitism that are actually promoted in large and writ large, but there is no critique of it. Now, if we understand what Trump and the American populist right wing is actually undertaking, their major agenda is to reverse the 1960s transformation of the American society, to undo the Immigration Reform Act from 1965 onward, in such a way that what we want is to make America white again, in essence reconstituting the Chinese Exclusion Act, but in a new terminology that would target Latinos and Global South immigrants. So that's literally one item on the agenda. The second is complete dismantling of the Civil Rights Act, and that's where the diversity, equity, inclusion, the assault on affirmative action began much earlier, as early as 1978 with the Bakke decision, the Supreme Court cases that basically eliminated affirmative action, the ability to remedy the 300 plus years of exclusion in that. So how to dismantle it? And we see the immediate dismantling of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is literally is being used to reverse the landscape in our civil society, to reverse any type of effort at the corporate level, at the societal level. Now, just to think about it, in the 500 corporate, what you call largest companies in the United States, the 500 of them, the number of CEOs that are of color was only 4%, right? And also the gender dynamic is also about 4%. So literally 96% of your CEOs that are holding in the top 500 companies are still predominantly, if not exclusively, white. But that's, again, 4% is too much to handle. So the reversal, the attempt to dismantle the society. And that's why to make America great again is to make America white, in particular white America in relations to pre-1964-65. And the last is the Voting Rights Act, which we see is dismantling in front of us by a variety of initiatives, whether making it difficult on blacks and community of colors to register to vote, in some cases closing DMV offices that cater or provide access to black communities or people of color communities, closing DMV offices or places of registration on Saturday, so people have to take day off in order to go and register, challenging the veracity of their registration card by saying that they are cheating, and that's where you get the ID card that is demanded in there as a way to limit. And also, if you think that some of these will try to point out that individuals who have some type of a legal entanglement will make their voter registrations difficult, then removing people from the registration rosters under dubious claims, and then added to it the gerrymandering that takes place. So literally what we are seeing is an attempt to craft a Republican white majority at a time of a dwindling demographic landscape, and using the threat or using the claim of anti-Semitism on college campuses and society to basically set the clock back to pre-1965 period, and to reconfigure the society in such a method. And with it, a wholesale abandonment of every aspect of constitutional rights, constitutional protection, legal protection, and the assault on the university, the judiciary, and those who are responsible for oversight is part and parcel of reconstituting the society to that earlier period.
Why aren't Jewish groups sounding the alarm? Because reversing American society back to pre-1960s was not a good time for Jewish people. There was actually a lot more anti-Semitism.
Oh, for sure.
And,
this is a period where
so now somehow they're going along with this policy and the threats against the Constitution itself, justifying it. Even the CEO of the ADL, when asked about the rights of these students and the rights of due process, something that's essential in our Constitution, that people can't just be, taken away and put off in detention like these college students are being, and shipped off into a different state without due process at all. This is surely something that, if it goes back to the pre-1960s, this will eventually impact Jewish people as well, because, white people in this society are not so fond of Jews. There's a lot of, if there is real anti-Semitism, it's usually coming from those segments of society, the white supremacists.
Well, I think this is where the current challenge for ADL and others is actually to understand what is taking place. The ADL and some of the major Zionist organizations, beginning in the 1970s, began to say that the anti-Semitism threat in the United States comes from the political left and comes from those who are in alliance with the Palestinian cause. I do think from early on and as well today, this was a mistaken, fatal propaganda constructed fear in order to legitimize the continued lobbying to support Israel and to make the United States unconditionally support Israel at all costs. And I think we are possibly at the precipice of a challenge and a consideration for both Jewish leaders, those who are on university professors and colleges, to begin to understand what is the program that is being forwarded by Trump and his right-wing populist coalition. At the end of the day, it is structured around an imagining of America of the distant past, that caters to wide segments of the society. And here, when I say wide, is also instrumentalizing the real pain and suffering of white working class, and to stoke them to say your pain, your economic positionality, your loss of purchasing power, the jobs that are lost is not caused by the corporate elite, those who have taken your job abroad, or those who have continued to reduce taxes and reduce and remove the social welfare net. It is basically the Mexican immigrant, the pro-Palestine activists on campus, and so on. So there has to be a reckoning, and I do think that some are beginning to recognize what is taking place, maybe not fast enough. And the ADL is definitely wrong on all fronts in trying to reduce everything to a defense of Israel. And I think increasingly segments of the Jewish intellectuals, individuals who are engaged in research, people who actually have examined this from a much wider scope, will come to realize that if this allowed to pass, this would mean a reversal of the American society to a period where racism, discrimination against everyone, Black, Jews, Palestinians, Latinos, Asians, and so on, will be the standard. And the exception will be point to equality. We also see that there is a movement on the Supreme Court to allow funding for religious schools. So there's been a considerable work to try to assert the separation of church and state, because at the end of the day, when the emergence of church and state funding from federal or state level, often the disproportionately financially goes to support institutions that reflects the dominant discourses in the society, which will be highly evangelical, highly racist, highly exclusive, and the impact would be upon the minorities. And I know some in the Muslim or Arab community that might think that there is a benefit from accessing funds from the federal government if this barrier between state and church is broken, because they might get some benefits to one school or another in here. But I think they are mistaken if they think that this actually, at the end of the day, would benefit a minority religious groups by asserting the access to federal funds or state funds as a result of a Supreme Court ruling. So I do think what we need is to have a clear analysis and to understand that anti-Semitism is being weaponized specifically for ulterior motives and projects that are disconnected to defending the Jewish person as a Jewish person or Jews as a communities, or also defending the various minorities in this country. So I think what we need is to mount a broader defense and to understand that this is what we are facing collectively.
Let me just introduce you again. Dr. Hatem Bazian is an authority on Islamophobia and colonization and decolonization studies, and he's the author of many books. And Professor, we have something like 10 minutes, and we really want to cover a few more issues if possible. One of them is the Trump administration is trying to use federal funding and withholding federal funding to pass all the policies that you just talked about. Very quickly, two things I'm interested in you commenting on. If you think what Harvard is doing, I think the most wealthy university on the face of earth, trying to fight this administration, if they're going to be successful, the meaning of it, if it fails or if it doesn't fail. Also, this idea of arresting the students, Mahmoud Khalil, Mahdawi was just released. There are a number of students that have been arrested. This is very alarming. This is making other students outside the U.S. who have plans to study here. And you know how important it is because they generate amazing wealth to these universities. The arresting of students, and if Harvard is going to be successful, and if not, what is the meaning of that?
Well, the use of federal funding as a tool is one of those, what you call, if you want to use the nuclear bomb from the administration, to try to take hold and reconfigure the university to be reflective of Trump and his current coalition. So that's the effort, is to use federal funds to actually undertake this massive transformation at the university level. And we could see that in many universities, complete unloading of the DEI departments, reconfiguring administrators. So there is already, even prior to the challenge that has been mounted by Harvard, to play along with Trump. Columbia basically surrendered its university to the Trump administration, MIT and others. The fact that Harvard decided to challenge, because the letter that came out from the administration is just horrific in terms of what is being demanded, including control of departments, controls of hiring, point of view neutral education, and so on. So Harvard, literally by necessity, needed to take a stand on what the administration was calling for. And I think the fact that Harvard stepped forward have strengthened some other universities. And I think there's a couple of professors at Rutgers University have put out a statement to try to get a coalition or a principal coalition among universities. And I do think that Harvard's case is going to make its way into the courts. When it gets to court, again, it's everybody's guess, but I do feel that even from the court level, they might consider the independence of the university as one of the foundational elements of the society in terms of how academic institutions function. That doesn't mean that the university is completely disconnected, but I think that the court might be more sympathetic to Harvard positions as well as other universities. That process will take some time, while simultaneously universities are going to begin to look for an alternative to federal funding. I don't think they'll be able to replace it, but there is definitely avenues to explore. As far as the impact on international students, arresting students, and so on, I think this will have a very impactful consequence on universities. Already international students are looking for other options. There are other countries are recruiting. The UK is heavily recruiting, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Europe in general. Massachusetts itself has about 80,000 foreign students studying in Massachusetts. It's the fourth largest institution. So we're talking about Harvard, Boston University, and other colleges in there. They actually are tremendously impacted by the large number of students. Not only that you have actually financial impact, but actually some of these are some of the top students across the world are coming in here. The U.S. College system is still one of the best in the world. It's still churning out some of the best research, some of the best infrastructure to conduct research on a variety, whether it's in medicine, in airspace, engineering, computer science, social sciences, and so on. So the net loss is not only financial, while it's important, is actually the effect of having top talent coming, especially at the higher level, whether it's master and PhD, and considering that both Mahmoud Khalil and Mohsen are both in the PhD program. Ozturk in Tufts University is also in the graduate program. So now we're beginning to say that graduate students who usually stay for quite a long time, sometimes they are supported by major grants and major research projects. This will have a dilatory effect and a consequential effect on the quality of research and the quality of students. this is at a time where Trump and all his circle are trying to compete with China. If you're actually going to cut that pipeline of high talent that is coming in for the university institution that produces the research, the patent, and so on, this will have a far-reaching consequence moving forward. And I don't think that it is very easily remedied without a complete shift in the attitude or perspectives that are being put out as we speak.
We only have a few minutes left, but, the Trump administration and his cabinet may be using or misusing or exploiting anti-Semitism for an ulterior agenda to reshape American society, culture, and roll it back. Because they see that college campuses and universities specifically in their independence is an obstacle for that type of long-term change that they're seeking. But in the meantime, they are achieving their goal of harming the Palestinian cause and the freedom of Palestinians and ending the genocide by somehow successfully silencing and in a way kind of killing the movement. There was a lot of momentum last year with these encampments. People were seeing it. There was, civil disobedience. But now, because of their drastic and crazy measures, a lot of people are afraid to act because they can just be picked up. So, in essence, the pro-Israel side sees that this, maybe down the line, that may be harmful to their community, but in the short term, it achieves their goals of helping the state of Israel dominate Palestine, continue the occupation, and maybe even forcibly displace Palestinians, giving them all of the Holy Land. So, and we only have a couple of minutes left. Do you think, what can the pro-Palestine side or pro-justice side do in the meantime to push back against this?
Well, while prima facie it looks like that the movement has been impacted, I actually read it very differently, if I may. I do think that the encampment period have taken its course. I do think that student activists and organizers are coming in more innovative ways. I do think that pressures on universities for divestment is taking shape. There is ballot measures that are being put at universities' student elections, and you're getting mass support. Just a couple of days ago, Georgetown University at 67% support of divestment. So I think that dynamic is unfolding. There is movement even among faculty, staff, and students that were not out in protesting for pro-Palestine, now as a result of the attack on the university, are defending the university and saying that Palestine has to be part of the conversation. And that's actually very interesting that some of the academic senates, some of the conversations and debate taking place, some of the staff unions who might not touch Palestine by itself, now as a result of defending the right of the academic freedom, of freedom of speech, the right of faculty, staff, and students to actually be there, are including Palestine speakers in platforms that were not actually in there. So for me, that the Palestine movement is far more discursive, far more innovative, and have actually become a fixture in the defense of the university and the defense of the society. You can no longer speak or argue about the university, the protection of the university, without actually saying that Palestine and speaking of Palestine is part and parcel of it. So in that sense, they might have won the short battle of trying to target students, and that's very measured and understandable. But I do think that they have lost the war of ideas on college campuses, because now the defense of academic freedom and free speech is tied directly to the Palestine issue on college campuses, and that is irreversible.
Well, we'll have to end it there. I mean, it seems like more and more universities are waking up that the Trump administration and many of them don't really care that much about anti-Semitism, but they're using it as a way to shift the ideological makeup.
It's a wedge issue. They're trying to use it as a wedge issue.
It's becoming a wedge issue, but it's more and more people are waking up to it. Unfortunately, a lot of the influential people still haven't caught on and are defending them. But we're out of time now. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Hatem Bazian. It's always a pleasure to have you on True Talk, and hope to have you back on again in the future. Folks, that wraps up our show today. The Scoop is next with today's news, and then more great programming here at WMNF. Have a great weekend. This is WMNF.